Hi, Greg Stobie here. One of the most common questions I get asked is how much fund do I need to run the ALR? Now, this is quite an open question because it depends on several things. Mainly the lot size you'll be trading or wish to trade. That is probably the most critical factor, because of course the larger the lot size, then the larger the margin requirement, and therefore the larger fund requirement. So the way it works, to work out the size of fund you need to run the ALR in order to reach the maximum number of hedges that it may need to reach in a worst case scenario, because that's the way you have to look at it. The ALR will run all day, all night perfectly well and never lose unless it cannot fund a hedge that it needs to open. So as long as you have the funds in order for the ALR to use to open a hedge that it may need to open, then it will go on forever and quite happily making money. So what is the minimum amount then? Well, if you regard, say, 8 hedges as being the maximum the ALR will ever need to reach in a worst case scenario, then you can work out the size of fund you need to reach 8 hedges. If you think 12 hedges is a safer number to go for, then you have to work out the fund for 12 hedges. And you do this calculation by using the multipliers that are here: 2.5, 1.5, 5.5, 10.5. Those are the multipliers used by the hedge, the ALR for the hedges: first hedge, second hedge, third hedge, fourth hedge, etc., etc. And you simply multiply those numbers by the lot size that you're using. So if I'm using, in this case, 0.02, I would multiply that 0.02 by 2.5, and that would give me a lot size. And of course, whatever margin is required for the 0.02 lot size, then the margin requirement will jump up to 2.5 times that margin. And the same for this one: 1.5, 5.5. So at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th hedge, say reaching 8 hedges, you're at 54 times the margin requirement for the initial lot size that you started with, in this case 0.02. 54 times the margin for 0.02 would be the size of the margin requirement for the 8th hedge. The margin, of course, comes from the size of your fund, so your fund would at least have to be that margin size, 54 times whatever the margin requirement is for 0.02. You see the margin is mentioned down here, but that margin will differ for everybody depending on what broker they're using and what leverage the broker gives. So I can't say one number will work for everybody, because it won't. If you've got a leverage of 1 to 500, for example, then the margin requirement for your lot size, initial lot size, will be different for those who have got a 1 to 200 leverage or 1 to 1000 leverage. That will all differ. So you simply take the margin requirement for your initial trade order, 0.02 in this case, and whatever margin is required for that, you multiply it by the hedge multiplier and use the biggest one that you think the ALR would ever need to get to in a worst case scenario. So like I said, if you think 8 hedges is the maximum it will ever go to, then 54 is the number you use to multiply the margin size requirement for 0.02 or whatever your initial lot size is, and that will give you a number. And that is the minimum margin requirement. There will obviously be a bit of drawdown at that time as well, such as over here, so you have to consider that. It may be a negative number as it's on the wrong side of the trade at that moment in time before it gets to take profit. So there'll be a negative number here of who knows what, several hundreds possibly at the 8th hedge position. So that also has to come from your fund. So you have to add that on to your fund size on top of the margin requirement. So it'll be 54 times the margin requirement for initial lot size plus whatever drawdown is required at the worst position possible for the price to be at the 8th hedge. So there's quite a lot to consider there. That's why there's not one number. But I worked out for the other thing is that it's different for the Dow indices than it is for Forex as well by quite a lot. The margin requirement isn't the same for indices as it is for Forex. So there's another one. So I worked out for a 1 to 500 leverage broker, then to reach 8 hedges on the Dow and have enough fund to cover it and be successful to 8 hedges, then you need $2,100 or pounds in your account as the minimum fund for the Dow. For Forex, it's a lot cheaper. It's something like 895 or something like that, under 1,000 anyway, 1,000 to be safe, if you like, for Forex in order to reach the 8th hedge using the smallest lot size. That is, of course, using the smallest lot size possible. The smallest lot size possible is 0.02, not 0.01. We can't use 0.01 because the multipliers here make a 3 decimal place number when used for a hedge, and brokers don't like 3 decimal places, of course. But by using 0.02 and multiplying it by these carefully calculated numbers, we don't get a 3 decimal place number, we get 2 decimal place number, and so that is okay with the brokers. So that's why 0.02 is the lowest lot size you can use. So bear that in mind. So 0.02 is the lowest lot size, and you need about just under £1,000 for Forex in order to reach 8 hedges, if indeed 8 hedges is the worst case scenario that you think it would ever reach, bearing in mind that the average hedge is about 2 or 3 and very rarely goes to 5 or 6, and very, very, very rarely have I ever seen it. In fact, I don't know if I ever have seen it go to 8 with this new version. Bear in mind, previous versions went to a higher number of hedges because it wasn't as good or as efficient as version 11 and version 10. So it's much more improved since the previous versions, and that means it doesn't go anywhere near as number of hedges as it used to because of the way it's been coded and everything we've learnt along the way. So I use 8 as a worst case scenario, and you can use that if you like, or use 9, 10 or 11 or 12 as your worst case scenario, but bear in mind you'll have to increase your fund size in order to cope with that hedge number. So I hope that has helped explain. I know it's a bit confusing, but rule of thumb is over £2,000 is required for minimum fund requirement for the Dow, and about £1,000 minimum requirement for Forex if you're trading the smallest lot size possible, which is 0.02, and you're using a 1 to 500 leverage broker. So those are the rule of thumb parameters for a 1 to 500 broker. A 1 to 1000 broker, well, it would be half that requirement, I would imagine, would work. But again, it's all very well doing it on paper or on maths, but to see it in real life, sometimes it can vary. But all you do is do it on demo and see what the margin requirement is, and use the multipliers like I've described to work out what the margin requirement would be at the highest position you wish to be able to get to. I hope that has helped, and happy trading.